it's my goal to help everybody understand how we can use this concept of values, goals, attitude, and then tomorrow's going to be aspiration, to really influence our life before sentencing, after sentencing, and when we come home. But one of the mindsets, or one of the things that we have to do, is we really have to, one of the guys I read from, you've probably seen, he's a really famous guy, Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote, seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. Meaning, we always have to assess the environment, right? We always have to be thinking about, well, if we want to have the right mindset, we've got to think about, well, what does that mean? And so in this environment, I want to tell you, what it's like, what I am doing, even why I'm doing this course. Many of you probably know that this course began, it may seem like it began, but it was really Cole who asked Mr. Johnson to look me up and see if I would come to the jail or something along those lines. But it happened right at the start of the pandemic. So it was during the start of this time when America was changing. Unemployment was going through the roof. There were problems going on. And I've got a lot of businesses, but I couldn't go out into the world all the time because there was lockdown. It was like lockdown out here. Yeah, one thing about doing 26 years in prison, I can tell you, is that prison positions you to be okay for a quarantine. I was fine working at home. But I got this call from Mr. Johnson that asked me, or an email from him that asked me if I would, consider doing something with Mecklenburg on a Zoom call or something. And immediately I saw, this is something I'm very passionate about, because I used to go into jails and prisons all across the country. I'd go into, Supermax in Colorado. I've gone into high security federal penitentiaries, state prisons, county jails, juvenile halls, all kinds of places like this. But it's really hard for me to do that with all of my other business responsibilities. And I had this time right now because I was at home, and after the call with Mr. Johnson, and I said, I could do the Zoom call. Sure, I'm very happy to do that. And that led to the first call. But then I said, I think that there's probably a big need for this, but I just don't have the time to travel and go all over. So I created this whole project with this idea of I wanted to teach and inspire people all across the country who are locked up, because I know that you guys don't have access to visiting. I know that classes are probably limited. There are few people coming in to jails and prisons, and this is an opportunity. So I had to do the same thing I'm asking you guys to do. And that was to think about, well, what's the best possible outcome here? It would be to create a whole curriculum of courses that helps people understand you don't have to be what the system says that you are. You can restore confidence. You can become, as Jarvis wants to do, become a writer. You can become a lawyer. You can become a physician. You can overcome any of these things if you pursue the path. And so I knew that their jails wouldn't have enough money to hire a school to completely develop a curriculum and all those kinds of things. But I knew, because I've lived it, I knew I could do it myself. And I just started reaching out to businesses and asking businesses, hey, I'd like you guys to sponsor this. There's a big problem in society, and it's just gotten worse since then. I mean, you got this social unrest all around the country, and, things have gotten worse. And I'm really glad that this started with a definition of success of saying, I'm going to create content that I can get into jails and prisons, and I'm going to have to do all these incremental steps to get there. So what does that mean? I had to first republish all of these books, right? I wrote a bunch of books. They're all now on an Amazon site. I had to redo my website at Prison Professors. I had to figure out how can I get a course, write it all out, and submit it into a digital way that jails and prisons can access it. And I did all of that from the first time I came into that pod until now. So that's what I'm trying to say. What it means is to get 100% commitment to success as you define success. That is a fundamentally different path than I would have to do to go build a real estate business. It's still values. I'm defining success to say I want to raise capital to invest in property. It's still setting clear goals, but I'm very hyper-focused on what it is I want to accomplish. And that's why I'm saying to have the right attitude, it means you've got to make 100% commitment to success as you define it at a given time in your life. And at different times of my life, I define success differently. Like Jarvis, in the last segment, Jarvis said he wanted to be a writer. I had to really crystallize what that meant. I need to learn how to develop new words or how to understand words, parts of speech. I needed to learn how to turn words into sentences. I needed to learn how to make sentences into paragraphs. And then I needed to learn how to outline a long writing project. And all of that was a commitment to say that takes work. That's something that I could measure myself on and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to define, first of all, what is a 10? And then I'm going to say, I'm going to aspire to give a 12, okay? I'm going to give everything I am, because if I can define success, then I can work towards hitting it. And I define success, as you've read about in Earning Freedom or in other parts of the course. I wanted to come back to society, I said, with my dignity intact, and nobody would know I'd serve a day in jail or prison. That's like the broad thing, right? But that's not specific. That's not specific. I just say, what's specific? I know I'm going to be in prison for 26 years. So specific said, what does my market expect? My market is law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. What do they expect from me? And I said, they're going to want me. It's not important what I want. It's what my market wants. They would want me to get an education. So I said, okay, I got to focus on getting an education, not as I define what an education is. What do they define as an education? And they define education as a university degree. So I said, I got to figure out how am I going to do that, and I got to make 100% commitment to it. Then they said, okay, I said I'm going to contribute in meaningful, measurable ways to society. It's not a matter of what I say. I said, well, what would people in society think? What would my market think? And so I said, if I wrote books, that would be one way that's very clear I'm contributing. And so either I could succeed on it in becoming a published author, or I would fail. That's a 100% commitment. I'm going to make 100% commitment to it. And either I succeed or I fail. Am I giving myself a 10? And there are a lot of steps to becoming a published author, right? A lot. Had I not taken the early steps in jail of learning how to define success, I never would have taken the next step of figuring out how to get into college. I never would have taken the next step of making a commitment to writing 1,000 words every day. And if I hadn't taken the next step of writing 1,000 words a day, I never would have learned how to write an essay or write a book review or write an op-ed piece for a newspaper or all these other things. So they all connected. But it all started with defining success, setting goals, and then making a 100% commitment to success. That's what I'm asking you guys to do. And it's why I'm challenging you. Come up to the hot seat. Debate me. Let me see if you're ready for prime time. And then challenge me and say why I am wrong. But if I'm right, then go back to your cell later and think about it. Listen and learn from somebody who's been in that chair and come out differently. Because that's what I want everybody to do in jail. We want to disrupt this strategy or this system that seems designed to perpetuate failure. I mean, there's some irony in that in jail, in prison, and Hancock, is Hancock in the room? Hancock, I can't see you, but you can hear me, okay? Because Hancock was in one of the same prisons I was in. And one thing about prison, they call it a system of corrections, okay? They call it a system of corrections. But here's the irony. The longer we spend in corrections, the less likely we are to be able to come out and function as law-abiding citizens. My job and your job is to change that mindset. It's to change that outcome. We know that in this era of, where we are, there's a lot of people planning, just because you're in jail right now, they're planning how many more penitentiaries do we have to build? Because they know that a lot of people that spend time in here keep on this cycle and their kids come in. And so we as individuals have to not run away from that. We have to live in the world as it exists and say, okay, I'm not going to be one of the guys that come back. I'm not going to be one of these guys that keeps failing over and over and over. I'm going to be one of the guys that really disrupts the mindset. I'm going to be one of the guys that shows, hey, I was in jail. That was the first inning of the game. I'm going to play 9 innings here, and every day I'm going to get better. Every day I'm going to get stronger. Every day I'm going to give a 100% commitment to success. That's really what I would like to be thinking about today. And I want to say that I got a corporate sponsor. The guy just out of prison. The craziest things happen because I pursue this path. Company CBD, is this new phenomenon out here in society. And I reached out to the CEO of one of these CBD companies, and I explained to him, hey, there's 40 million people out of work. Hey, there is a pandemic going on in America. Hey, there is, a crisis with mass incarceration because the guys in jail and prison, they're going to get the worst of this. They're not going to be able to come back. And I asked the CEO, I said, if I created a program, would you sponsor it and allow me to develop resources so that I can get more content into jails and prisons to teach guys in jail and prison how to become successful? And that's what led to this sponsorship that I have that allows me to go into more jails and prisons. And, I have to do my job. I have to make 100% commitment of doing what I can. And that's why I'm also reaching out to other formerly incarcerated people like Weldon Long, that you may have seen the video yesterday, but also guys like Joe Guerrero, who I interviewed yesterday, the host of the After Prison Show. And, he's a guy that will also say, I was in jail many times. I went to prison twice. And while I was in prison, it wasn't until I was in it that I decided to change my mindset that makes him now phenomenally successful as the biggest YouTuber out there on prison. But there's a lot of them. The difference is that Joe Guerrero is not glorifying, what it means to be a super convict. He's not glorifying what it means, this stereotype of jail. And the stereotype of jail is failure. That's it. It's failure. You heard the term jailbird, okay? You heard the term convict, okay? You've heard the term felon, right? You heard the term loser. Well, I guarantee you, it's up to you. If you want to wear that hat, or you want to wear a hat that says, I'm going to be successful. That's what Prison Professors Program is all about. Being successful as you define success. That's what's going to differentiate you from the other 2.3 million people in jails and prisons that keep on this path of going in and coming out and going in and coming out. And if you can define success, then you can set the clear goals, but you got to have the right attitude. That's what I learned from leaders. And that's what I want to share with you. Not because I'm saying I'm a leader, but because this is what made the difference for me. Is that after going through 9,500 days in prison, I looked and learned from leaders. They helped me understand I got to change the way I think. I don't have to be ashamed that I made bad decisions. I don't have to say that, I'm something less, or I am a failure, or I am, what the current narrative is. I am a man, and I am an American, and I am going to be stronger, and I'm going to do well. And that is the pathway to success. So that's what I'm striving to share with everybody in there. And now I want to hear from some guys in there that want to test me on this. And let's talk a little bit more about what does it mean to have the right attitude to you. And I'd love it if we could stay on this pathway of tying it to values, how we define success, to goals, which is what we're going to do. So come on up to the hot seat if you're willing to do this with me.